Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone, and yes, as you can see, I still have a problem with this right eye of mine. It's still on the tail end of an eye infection, but we're not here today to talk about my ocular issues. We are here today to talk about the phenomenal new Netflix TV series, Dark. Dark, in my humble opinion, is the best TV series that's been made in the last few years. It's better than Stranger Things, I think, better than House of Cards. This is just some really, really well-made TV. In fact, I think this is easily the best new thing on TV right now. And I'll explain why in a minute. I think it's even better than Stranger Things. But basically, this is a show that is kind of like Stranger Things, The Butterfly Effect, Terminator, Fringe, all rolled into one. It's got elements of all those different and thematic elements of all of those different shows or films, very much a part of it. This is some great science fiction. It's not sci-fi fantasy. We've got a lot of sci-fi fantasy these days, but this is really, really good traditional science fiction. And traditional science fiction is about exploring the big, profound existential questions, the big metaphysical questions, exploring the philosophy of personhood, the philosophy of the mind, what are memories, who am I, what is my purpose, those big questions about the human experience. And that's exactly what this show touches on. It's basically a story that revolves around four families. It's subtitled, it's in German, four German families in a small rural German town. And it's not just four families, but it's these four families across successive periods of time. The story is just very well crafted and interwoven together in that way. Basically, as I said, I think this is better than Stranger Things for a couple of reasons. First of all, this has a really strong sort of European crime drama, crime thriller sensibility to it. It's really well crafted and really well put together, except it's not really, like Stranger Things, it starts with a crime, and it is the same crime. It's the disappearance of a boy, a small boy, but it's about much more than that, and there's this whole time travel science fiction component to it. But it doesn't play out like a typical sci-fi TV series might play out. The emphasis really is strongly, as I said, that very European crime drama, thriller type sensibility. There's a strong focus on characters and character development. And it just makes this show that cut above Stranger Things, that next level. The use of music and visuals in this are just phenomenal. It's just a beautiful show to watch. I love the color grading. I love the cinematography. It's glorious to watch. The opening title sequence is worth the watch alone, and that opening theme, which is the theme song for this TV series, is just, that alone is worth the watch. But each episode is just a visual feast. It's a musical feast, and sound-wise as well, the way in which they use sound and music to really convey the sense of disorientation and confusion that would go on if you were caught up in a time paradox, which is really what this series is all about. I'm not going to tell you too much more because I don't want to spoil it for you. This is a show you have to watch, and you can't nod off. As I said, it's subtitled, so you've really got to keep an eye on things. But it's not something you can sort of have on in the background, do something else, and then come back to. You need to give this your full attention so you can get the whole complexity and the depth of the plot and what's happening. But man, it's just so beautiful. And as I said, the thing for me that really takes this to the next level and makes this, I think, probably the best TV series that's been made in the last few years is the fact that there's this strong emphasis on actual characters and character development. The people who wrote this, the people who made this show, clearly love their original concept, their original story concept, because they have shown so much care and attention to it. And they've clearly done research around the science of what's involved here, and have brought that into the story. But at the same time, they have also invested in the craft of storytelling. These are people who clearly know how to tell stories and write stories because it's just such a well-written TV series. You have these characters who are actually characters. And Stranger Things, one of my criticisms, I think, of Stranger Things, I really loved season 1. I didn't like season 2 so much. Go and check out my review of season 2. if you want to see what I thought of that. But one of the things about Stranger Things where I think it's a little bit weak is often the characters are more like tropes or caricatures. They are a caricature of what a young nerd boy in the 80s would look like, and you put together a certain set of tropes, and that's what the character is. There's nothing like that in Dark. Instead, Dark, they've actually created characters that feel like real people that would live in the real world and would be affected by these profound mysteries, these science fiction mysteries of time travel in a really a very reality-based kind of way. And what's great about them is the characters are complex. There's one particular character who, at the start of the series, in fact, we introduced to him very early on in the very first episode, and you think you know what he is. If you're looking for tropes, you will have a particular idea in mind, and you'll think, I know what, this character, he's the sleazy guy who's having the adulterous affair. But by the end of the series, not at all. You realise, in actual fact, you don't want to support his adultery at all, and you're not favourable to that. But what you do realise is that there's a whole lot of complexity and nuance to this character and to his life, and you completely change your view. It's very real in that way, and that's how the human experience is. We don't tend to look at people that, unless we don't know them at all, but people we know well, we don't look at them generally in black and white terms. We are able to see those shades of greys and those nuances and to sort of contextualize their behaviors based on all the other things that make up their human experience. And so this show really relates and reflects that really well. These characters are interesting. They have interesting backstories. They have interesting motivations. It's complex. There's no truth, justice in the American way type good guys, and there's no moustache twirling villains, Ha ha ha, Jeeves, that'll teach them. There's none of that in this. It's not tropes. It's not cliches. It is not caricatures. It's actual characters that are really, really well developed. I also love the use of names in this show. There's a family whose last name is Doppler, which is actually quite clever. If you don't know what the Doppler effect is, go and Google it. Watch the show first, then go and Google it. There's another key character whose name is Jonas, which is obviously a variant of the name Jonah. And again, watch the series and then go and look up the meaning, if you don't know what it is, of the name Jonah, and also a bit of the history of the biblical character of Jonah, and you sort of realise they've really put some thought into this. This is quite clever. This is a well-crafted story. It's not just schlock, run-of-the-mill, formulaic storytelling. There's really something good here. Like I said, it has a darker European sensibility to it. Like two Germans writing each other their Christmas cards. Dear Dietrich, I have looked at the Christmas tree today and I have realized that I look into the abyss stares back at me. Life is a futile, meaningless struggle. Merry Christmas. It's got that sort of darker, at times perhaps bleaker sort of outlook on life and some of those bigger philosophical questions. But it never feels overwhelming either. It never feels oppressive. It never feels like there's no hope or it's absolutely hopeless and there's this awful... Like, the director's cut of The Butterfly Effect was just a bleak and awful film, and I don't recommend it at all. This isn't really like that. There's a more somber tone to this, but I wouldn't call it bleak. From my perspective, I think that this show is basically it is destined to become a cult classic. So there you go. Mark my words, write them in your diary. Today is the day that Brendan Malone on Left Foot Media said that this show, Dark, is going to become a cult classic. It will. Once word gets out, and it is starting to filter out slowly. I don't know why this hasn't really taken off with a hiss and a roar. Perhaps it's so close to Stranger Things. Maybe it's the time of year, we're winding down a bit. But basically, this is going to be a cult classic. It's going to be one of those series that I guarantee in 6 months' time, a lot more people are going to be raving about. And in several years' time, this is going to be one of those things that people say, you know what? This is kind of like The Wire. It sort of set a standard. It's something you should definitely have on your must-watch TV list. It really, really is well crafted. It's only 10 episodes long, and it's got a phenomenal cliffhanger at the ending. I have a few ideas about where it's going. I hope they don't go in one direction they think they could go, but which would be highly politicised. But I'm still confident, based on what we've seen in this first series, that there's enough intelligence and common sense in this writing team to create something that won't just fall into political cliches or ideological sort of preaching in the next season. And even though there's no word on it yet, I'm really, really hoping that they fund and commit to making a season 2, because basically you'll get to the end of the season and you will be wanting season 2. That's how good the series is. That's how good the ending is. It's a great cliffhanger. It really does set up season 2, and this show absolutely deserves a season 2. It also absolutely deserves your watch. It's unlike Stranger Things, by the way. It's not something that you probably watch with young kids. So Stranger Things is not necessarily for young kids either, but perhaps a slightly younger audience, older audience could watch Stranger Things. This one is, there's over the whole series, I think there's a total of 2 sex scenes. One of them is more graphic than the other over the entire series. But there's obviously a bit more adult language, and it's a bit darker in tone. It's not a Pixar movie. It's not a Disney film. But it will, as I said, it's the kind of TV show that you get to the end of and you think, wow, these are people who really love their craft. This is like movie making that has been broken down into a TV series, and they do such a good job at it. And I think what I like about it, perhaps that would put it even above, say, something like House of Cards, is I think that there's a certain complexity to the story. Well, there has to be, because time travel's involved, but they've clearly thought it through, and they tease out the story bit by bit by bit. And so it's not like they drop it all on your lap and then it sort of progresses from there. You know, there's still these moments where you're waiting for the reveal, you're waiting to find out, and it's really creative the way it's all put together. So there you go. Dark, the brand new series on Netflix. It is well worth the watch, especially if you love good science fiction. This is absolutely a must watch. If you've seen it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please let me know in the comment section below. And don't forget, I'm trying to make more video content, but I need more time to do that, and I would really love your support. So please check out my Patreon link that's below, and if you really like the content I'm producing, then please support it, get behind it financially, and I can make more of it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on Left Foot Media.